Hello, internet friends. I am Sixy. With the release of talent trees, Blizzard has added in an option to choose a starter build. I think this is a great idea. However, not all builds nor tanks are the same. So I did some beta Mythic Plus keys on all 6 tanks to find out which starter build was the most new tank friendly. Now keep in mind this video was put together the day before pre-patch and things might be fixed or changed once pre-patch hits on live servers. So if there's any information that is out of date, I apologize for that. I will be doing separate videos for talent builds for each tank post pre-patch. Check those out and let's jump in. Now I'm basing this list on 3 criteria. First and most importantly was fun. I know, shocker, who cares about having fun when you can just min-max, but here we are. My second metric was tankiness, and damage output, which often correlates with threat, was my third decision-making criteria. Coming in as the clearest bottom choice at number 6 is Brewmaster Monk. First and foremost, when you click into the starter build, Blizzard just decided to leave 2 talent points in the monk tree unspent. This is crazy because the starter build choices connect you with some great options to spend your last 2 points on, and they just didn't spend them for you. In terms of fun, this class was just straight up not a good time. Brewmaster Monk itself is in a really good spot. The choices that Blizzard made for this starter build make picking up this class and just jumping into some keys problematic to say the least. Using this build as an experienced tank, early threat, damage, and self-mitigation on pull were all massive hurdles to enjoying my time playing this class. I constantly found myself begging for my global cooldown to come back faster so I could survive. This is a stark contrast to builds I have personally put together, and I am no Brewmaster expert. My builds were fun. I found myself min-maxing damage, barely struggling with survivability. That's why this starter build got the last place, and deservedly so. The one positive point is that the damage was not the worst performing when it came to overall damage by the end of the dungeon, but that's not saying much. Coming in 5th place with very similar problems, we have Protection Paladin. At least with Monk, the person had an idea of what they were trying to accomplish, but fell flat. With Prop Pal, the design around this build is very suspect. Most of the Prop Pally talents do not significantly increase their damage, and a lot of them were chosen at the cost of tankiness. As a result, the class with the starter build feels super squishy, and while I may have these extra damage talent points, it ends up reducing my overall damage from either having to kite or from dying. Ultimately, this makes playing the class just not fun. I play tank to tank. The damage part is just the fun part, trying to figure out how I can do a little bit more to help my group. That's the fun in playing the class for me, but I still have to be able to do my job. With this build, I feel like I have next to no buttons to press to keep myself alive. I was constantly starved out on holy power, and all that to do the same amount of damage or less than other tanks. All in all, the only reason this class is better than Brewmaster Monk is the number of buttons I have to press to still die. With Monk, I had to press like a million and I wasn't sure which one to press, and I never have a global cooldown. With this one, I can't press any buttons because I don't have any holy power, but I only had 3 to choose from once I did have holy power. Which brings us to 4th place, Guardian Druid. There is nothing inherently wrong with the starter build. Having played around with a few builds, the starter build is about as good as you can get. I maybe would have made some different choices, but I don't think the choices they did make were wrong. Bear, in my opinion, is the tankiest of all 6 tanks. The biggest problem Bear Druid is having is its damage. It can be fixed a little bit with certain talents, but this is not a playstyle for a new tank, and even then, a highly complicated mental gymnastics to even get that damage just isn't worth it. With the damage on Guardian Druid being so bad, playing it becomes more of a focus on aggro, which personally for me isn't a fun playstyle. Separately, while not affecting the fundamental flaws of the class, the starter build also bypasses a lot of utility, which I find to be a detriment to the feel of the class. Now, with the final 3 rankings, I want you to keep in mind that the number 1 choice is the number 1 choice because it's incredibly overpowered. But for now, the number 3 and 2 best tanks in this conversation boils down to which starter build is just better. So losing by a hair is Vengeance Demon Hunter, which takes 3rd place. Vengeance Demon Hunter is in a decent spot. Personally, it could be better, but this is my class and I have a lot of opinions. The starter build falls flat when it comes to key talents that were chosen by Blizzard. For some reason, this build forgoes a lot of utility that makes Demon Hunter a great class and forgoes other talents that make the class even tankier. And the thing about this is that it does so for the sake of a lot of movement increasing abilities, which is just weird. The class does not have mobility issues, ever. I'm going to save most of my comments for an in-depth look at Demon Hunter, as this is my main class, but at the end of the day, it's fun, it's tanky enough, and does enough damage to earn it the number 3 slot for starter builds. Coming in at number 2, and yep, you guessed it, is Blood Decay. As far as starter builds are concerned, this build is probably the most sound. With Blood Decay, there's a clear logic to the choices that they make for starting tanks. The class with this build feels good to play, it's tanky, and it has a ton of utility. This tank is great for learning the ropes of the dungeon and figuring out what spells and abilities can be CC'd, since it has a ton of options for canceling enemy abilities. With that being said, the defensive rotation of Blood Decay is just a little bit more complex than Vengeance Demon Hunter, and can be a little bit harder to pick up if you're new, especially because you have to be mindful of early aggro. But all in all, this is the best build of all 6 starter builds. The thing is, Sixy, if this is the best build, why is it not number 1? Asked not a single person. And the answer to the question no one asked? Because Warrior. It is the flavor of the month of all flavors of the month. It might be more flavor of the month than Survival Hunter is in Season 4. This class is so broken. The starter build is actually kind of bad. Like, objectively, at least 25% of the talent choices could be much better. But that literally does not matter. Its damage is crazy. Like 8,000 damage more than the next best tank. Its tankiness is only matched by Guardian Druid. Don't feel like pressing a single defensive? No worries, you'll probably just live. Historically, this class was kind of on the bottom tier of movement abilities. Now it has like 5. Here's the thing about the starter build. My biggest point of contention is Shockwave. It's a frontal AoE stun that does a bit of damage. It makes sense if you're a new tank to have an option like this. However, at the same time as they picked Shockwave, they didn't choose other CCs in the talent tree, which is kind of a weird choice that this is where you were going to draw the line. With all that being said, the class is in such a good spot currently that it had to be number 1. If it gets nerfed, which it probably should, then the discussion gets a lot more open and fun. And all these different choices on playstyle with other tanks suddenly become a fun and engaging conversation. So my final thoughts are, with a little bit of balancing, I think tanks could be in a great state as they were at the start of Shadowlands. Anyways, please subscribe. Thanks.